Good, everyone. Just waiting for people to join in. So today I have been banished to the staircase due to some unpleasant weather, which feels like a betrayal because Auckland has been beautifully sunny over the last week and a bit. But I am here to answer all of your Pro-Am questions and chat to you about Auckland Rumble, which will be coming up this weekend. So we're just going to wait for people to join us, and while we're at it, I'm going to grab myself a cup of tea. Someone has just sent me a very mean meme about starting a podcast. I'll have you know this is crucial development content for the fans. So today we're going to be chatting about pro-am debating. So this is going to be particularly helpful if you're someone who is anticipating going to a pro-am tournament, either as an am or as a pro, but also some of the theories behind development in general, both things that you can implement in your own practice if you are someone at the beginning of your debating career, but also ways in which you can encourage and help people from your society to develop further. And one of the things I think I'm most proud of about Auckland this year is that we've really embraced quite an expansive development program. We've tried to formalize it a lot more. So hopefully some of the discussions that we can have today aren't just about the individual techniques for debating, but also how you start generating a culture of development within your institutions and making sure that people are engaged and can continue to develop. So the first thing I'll chat about is development in general, development as a theory, as something that needs to be engaged with society-wide. Then I'm going to talk to you about AM debating. What are the best ways to be an AM? How do you get the most out of the process if you're coming in from the perspective of not having done a huge amount of debating before? And then secondly, finally talk to you about the benefits and ways in which you can become better at being a pro debater within a team. Ways where you can help your AM, but also develop your own skills while you're doing it. Also develop some broader perspective in terms of what the pro-am activity and the value that it can do for you as a speaker and as a debater. So first thing to broadly chat about is development in general. And the reason why I wanted to put this at the beginning of the discussion is because I think sometimes we approach development in a little bit of an atomistic way. When we imagine development, we imagine someone sitting in their room for hours and hours at a time doing like prime minister's speeches or 4-minute prep or doing officers' cup debates or even just doing practice debates, when in reality that is probably a small part of what makes societies successful. And what I'd highlight there is the fact that it is often societies that become successful. Societies obviously being structures of far more than one person who makes it possible to do broader development activities, but also makes the individual things that you can do or the actual practical aspect far more effective in terms of improving your debating skill. So if you're someone who works within a university society, within a development officer role or the president of your society, and you're looking to build some of the development potential of your society, here are some of the things that I think set aside effective universities at developing that broad development programs and universities that have more difficulty in engaging people. And I think my one most important tip is that good judges are better debaters. I strongly believe that developing people who know how to judge debates and can step back and have a broader perspective about what makes good debating, what makes people effective debaters, is key to turning those debaters into effective speakers themselves. And in fact, many of the most successful speakers from New Zealand have started their careers focusing a lot on their judging and then using that perspective it gives them, using it to develop them as speakers. And I think the focus that I have done on my own judging in the last couple of years has definitely been responsible for making me into a better speaker, because it exposes you to high quality debating. It makes sure that you are someone who is thinking about things not just from the perspective of the debater, but understanding how judges make decisions is something that makes you immensely better. So what is a way in which you can start building the judging understanding of your society? The first is to have just like regular club nights, but also to have a strong focus or a formalistic focus on matching lower level judges with judges that are more senior, that have more understanding, and formalizing the process by which you teach them. So obviously in New Zealand we have a trainee system, which is quite extensive and I think actually very good at creating good judges. It forces you to think about the process of judging in a determined way. And if you are just an individual society, that is something that you can implement. Implementing a dedicated judging program that encourages people to start learning the judging aspect and encouraging good debaters to start learning the craft of judging early is something that can turn them into much more effective debaters down the line. So my first broad recommendation is make sure you're not just producing good debaters, you want to be producing good judges, and that often starts from formalizing your approach to judging, making sure that people have opportunities to judge. And if you are in a smaller, newer society, asking people from outside of your society to come in to judge your events. One of the things I'm looking forward to most about Auckland Rumbles, we've got some incredible judges, people who've been Worlds and Australs, DCAs and CAs who will be popping in for a round or two, who'll be able to share their experience of judging with the people on their panels and obviously be able to give feedback to the people advancing. So developing that institution of judging is very important. The second thing that I would note is that societies do very, very well when they are interconnected. And this is one of the things that I also think New Zealand does quite effectively, in that we make sure that we have a New Zealand-wide approach to many of the activities we do. Most of our development tournaments involve other campuses within New Zealand. Obviously, things get a little bit shaken up when you have like a COVID-19 pandemic in terms of being able to engage, but try and build a regionalized or a group perspective, or even just a pair of universities in order to spur yourself to do things that are better, in order to bring in vitality whenever one society is flagging a little bit, and get that cross communication going. And then I think the final thing that is important is build a culture of participation. Encourage people to go to online tournaments, give people support in terms of finding pros or AMs that want to go with them. One of the other things that I like about Auckland Rumble is the more considered perspective we have to pro and am in terms of the definition, that encourages people who traditionally might not feel comfortable going to those top level debaters, or people who might just want to form super teams with people they like, even though they're kind of like fake AMs. That's the type of thing you want to avoid when you are building Proam, because it can make the activity seem exclusive. It means that you can have people falling through your development cracks. So really make sure that as a society, you are being a facilitator in terms of helping people who want to learn how to debate. And there are people who are terrible at debating when they come in and stick at the activity for a couple of years and then become phenomenal debaters. If you're not giving people those pathways or facilitating those pathways, it's going to be quite difficult going forward. So 3 tips for the development programs. Firstly, make sure that you're developing judges, not just developing speakers. Secondly, make sure you're reaching across institutions and building links with other institutions that can raise you up, or building like a regional perspective on debating. And thirdly, make sure you're facilitating things for younger members of your society who may feel uncomfortable seeking out development opportunities, even if those development opportunities exist. So let's have a discussion about pro-am debating. But firstly, to answer, what is my favorite type of tea? I love rooibos tea. I'm a proud South African, so I have here my bright red rooibos tea. Take a sip. It is very delicious. Yeah, I drink gallons of it. It's a very good exercise drink. So I have like a thing of iced rooibos tea. So whenever I go for a run, I'll be able to drink that. I drink it frequently during debating tournaments. But of course, everyone has their own favorite tea. And if you like a tea and you're a pro debater, make your AM drink the type of tea that you like. That is definitely an appropriate use of the power that comes along with being a pro debater. Okay, so first thing we're going to chat about is AMs. So this section of the discussion is going to be particularly if you are an AM in a BP setup, what are the things that you can do to make sure that you're maximizing that experience and taking the most out of it in terms of your development. First things first, your pro is doing something really nice. Hopefully, what you will be taking out of this experience is not just a couple of rounds of debating with someone who teaches you how to give an effective POI, but hopefully can be someone that you tag back to in time. So maybe engage with them on a little bit more than just the technicalities of debating. Type the name. Ooh, I don't know if I will, but excellent contribution, Ashvin. You make sure that you're trying to become friends with your pro, because that might be someone who you can tag back to over the years. And one of the things that I think sets aside people who often get coaching from those who don't get coaching at schools levels is they have a person that they can ask questions to about debating that go far beyond just the confines of that tournament. So make sure you're building a relationship with someone that you can engage with down the line. And if you are coming to Auckland Rumble, all of our pros have been instructed, or in fact will be instructed, to make sure that they are nice to you, that they try and form a relationship, and I hope you feel comfortable being able to talk to them in the future about debating things, because realistically they're just nice people who remember just a couple of years ago what it was like for them coming into the competitive university debating scene, and they want to be able to help you in the long run. Type the name of the tea. Sorry, I thought you wanted me to type ROOIBOST. They want to be your friends. They want to show you types of tea that you can get into. So hopefully you develop that relationship in the long term. Second thing that's important: experiment. Sometimes if you are an AM coming in, sometimes it's easy to be a little bit passive, to just rely on the instructions and try and make sure that you're not doing anything but the instructions. That is not the correct approach to amming, because one of the most wonderful things about a pro-am relationship is that you have an opportunity to try new things. Doesn't matter that much if they fail. You can collaborate as you are going through those options, and importantly, when things inevitably backfire, and they will regardless of whether you're experimenting or not, or the mindset you come in, you will do things that you did not mean to do. You will make mistakes. Your pros will be making mistakes. Everyone in debating makes mistakes. World's finalists make mistakes all the time when they do debating. You have someone experienced who you can chat to, figure out what worked, figure out what didn't work, figure out what worked for you, and brainstorm ways in which you can improve that process. So make sure that you're trying to experiment a little bit while you are learning, trying different things, figuring out different combinations. And I think that also applies to speaker position. So when I'm a pro, I try and make sure that I'll speak in any position. The AM is the one who gets to shift into various positions with BP. But sometimes it's good actually just to shake it up, to demonstrate for them the different ways to do different speaker positions, to push them to understand all the different speaker positions, because that should be a safe environment for them to make mistakes. And it should be an environment where you as an AM are looking for those opportunities to take as much breadth out of the experience as you can, rather than just perfecting a couple of tiny skills. It's about making you into someone who can learn about debating in the long run, rather than necessarily just being stuck to the confines of that tournament. Third thing, make sure that you are definitely getting feedback from all of the judges that you were judged by, and then you have a conversation about that feedback with your pro. Seek out those conversations, because one of the things that I think sets apart my favorite memories in my development careers wasn't necessarily the individual debates that happened. It wasn't even necessarily the specific feedback about the round. It was the broader conversations you could have with your pro about all of the various weird parts of debating theory that can possibly come up with debate, the random trails of conversation that you have with them about developing further, and those types of conversations happen when you seek them out. So create those opportunities by whenever you get feedback, bring that feedback to your pro, talk to them about it, ask them what they could have done better, and really have not just a isolated bit of feedback, but turn it into a broader conversation. Of course, your pro will be quite useful because they'll be able to start help you understand the themes from the feedback that you're getting. So if you're getting a pieces of feedback that are phrased in ways that you can't really understand the common links, your pro is someone who is likely to be able to understand how those bits of feedback fit together, and potentially ways in which you can fix those underlying problems. Last thing I'll say about being an AM is I think really take the opportunity to enjoy it. Be impressed by the cool things that your AM do, your pros do. Sometimes your pros will be able to do quite mind-blowing things, especially if they're speaking after you in terms of taking your points and generating them into something that you totally didn't expect. So take those opportunities to ask your pros about the strategies that they use. Not necessarily them being things that you'll be able to immediately introduce into your debating, but once again, they're the type of things that become the foundations or the building blocks for when you're 2 years down the track and you're speaking in an Australs Grand Final that you will be able to pull out and do spectacularly. Does anyone have any questions about ways that you can really maximize your experience if you're an AM, especially if you are an AM who is listening to this? Feel free to just flick it in the comments at any point. Let's chat about pros and some of the things that you can do as a pro. So as I gave, as the feedback I gave earlier to people who are AMs, one of the things that you want to be taking out of this experience as a pro is a enduring relationship with an AM, knowing that you're someone who they can ask questions of, and making sure that you are just like emotionally available throughout the tournament, because it can really suck if you're an AM and you feel like your pro isn't really there for you. So hold yourself to a slightly higher standard in terms of taking the jump over the awkwardness that might exist when you are a pro. In terms of generating that long-term relationship, and also just in the run-up to the tournament, checking in with them, asking. What I like to do, especially before the tournament, is ask lots of questions of your AM. So ask them what positions do they like to speak in, what's their note-taking style, which is their favorite of the four positions you can be in BP, like opening government, opening opposition, closing government, closing opposition. Because asking those types of questions of your AM can start to help you understand where they are in their debating journey, what level of understanding they're coming in with, which obviously is something that you can then cater your feedback to. But equally, it's a really easy way to start generating the types of conversations where you can start helping them develop in terms of figuring out the things that, wow, you like speaking deputy in opening opposition. This is what I think this shows about you as debater. You must feel comfortable when you are able to engage with ideas that are fully formed and try to close off those ideas and try to build a little bit. So figuring out the things that and helping them identify what their strengths are, that can be a really rewarding thing for an AM, like being reassured that they do have strengths. The things that they like about debating are things that make them good debaters, or strengths that they can build on. If you start asking them those questions about their preferences, about things that they like, about things that they understand, you can really reassure the things that they are doing well. So 2 questions in the comments. Firstly, BP note-taking advice. And secondly, how do you match the level of synchronization with your pro? So I'll start that second one. How do you match the level of synchronization with your pro? It really depends. So obviously you do not just want to mirror your pro. You want to be experimenting. You want to be pushing things. And it'll really depend on your specific relationship with your pro, how much permission you ask or how much you run things past them within that time. What I would say is obviously within the constraints of debating, you do have limited time. So making sure you're not running everything past them is quite important. You need to focus on actually doing the debating and implementing things. And then afterwards, you can have those types of discussions. So really make sure you're generating a level of synchronicity where you can learn from their experiences, but you're not just repeating the stuff they say or parroting the stuff they say, because you want to be practicing that stuff yourself. And then you have that excellent personal feedback machine that you can then get feedback afterwards, and say in an automatic basis, once you get that feedback afterwards, then you can start trying to implement it into later debates. And sometimes it can be quite divergent. So your pro could do something, and then you'll want to expand on it in a way that you think is interesting, you think is neat. It might work, it might not, but that's a process that you can do with them. You can say, hey, should I run with this idea? And they can say, no, this is the obvious flaw of this idea. You shouldn't go down that. Experiment on something new. Or they can drive you the other direction and say, go for it. We'll figure it out. I'll ask a POI that tries to sew it up later. So yeah, having that questioning relationship is probably the correct level of synchronicity. In terms of BP note-taking advice, I think this is one of the most excellent conversations that you can have with your pro when you're coming in, because everyone takes notes slightly differently. And if you want a run through of all the different ways in which you can take BP notes, I think I have a earlier episode about ways in which I take notes, but very different people take different notes, and it'll be part of your process of experimentation to borrow the parts of your pro's style that you like, but letting the parts go that you don't think is really working for you. So Ryan, ask your pro about the note-taking style that works for you. Maybe watch one of the earlier videos. I'm sure someone will pop in a link to it about how I like to take BP notes. If I've done that, if I haven't done it, I'll go check the notes. I'll actually pop that in the comments later if no one does. If not, I'll do it in a later session. But talk to your pro about that. That's the type of conversations you want to have going. Okay, so what we talked about with the pro is obviously building that ongoing relationship, and also making sure that you're explaining to them how the feedback operates. So highlighting the strengths, asking them lots of questions going in, and then making sure that if your AM is being awkward, you're keeping that conversation going after the debate, asking them, what feedback do you get? How are you writing down your feedback? How are you systematizing your feedback? How are you thinking about this issue? And obviously you don't want to overwhelm them or bombard them, but you want to try and generate those organic conversations about what is going forward. Some of the more advanced stuff that you can do. One of the things that I found most wonderful about certain pros that I debated with, if I was in a round with a pro that they also really liked, they'd swap AMs for feedback. And so that can be a really wonderful thing to do for your AM, is if you're like, wow, we debated against an excellent debater, I'm going to introduce you to them. I'll set up a chat, and then obviously they'll set up a chat with their AM, and then you can cross feedback in a way that can be really useful. Because what you do there is essentially, in some ways, it can be a little bit of a fly on the wall in terms of a high-level conversation that you can have with another good debater, and they can learn from that, or they can ask questions or receive feedback from that pro. Because remember, you're not just integrating this person into the skills of debating, you're also integrating them into the community of debating. So breaking down those barriers between them and other good pro debaters, demystifying the process a little bit, is a really wonderful thing that you can do for your AM. Other broad feedback. I've already mentioned when I was chatting to the AMs about the value of your pro being able to link up all the bits of feedback that you get. And I think as a pro, you really have a bird's eye view of the things that your AM is doing well, the things that your AM is not doing well, and being able to link together feedback. So if you want to systematize it a little bit more, one thing you can do is do shared collection of feedback. So after every debate, you don't just ask, okay, what was your feedback for this round, but you ask the question, how do you think the feedback from this round is related to the feedback that came before? Because even just forcing your AM to take that mental jump of not just thinking about the debate that they did then, but also to think about how potentially can all of these bits of feedback link together, and not just giving them the answer saying, well, this clearly shows that you struggle with constructing comparatives, talking them through those different issues and asking and encouraging them to adopt a broader systematic approach to their own feedback for long after they're being the AMs in Proam relationships is an enduring change you can have on their debating careers. And I think the last thing is, don't put too much pressure on your AM. Proam debating is very, very chill. They're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. Point out your mistakes. Actually, I think that's a great bit of feedback. Make sure that you, after your debate, be like, I tried this. I don't think it went that well. I think I should have changed this up a little bit. Shows them that debating is not just a process of figuring out what the correct answer is, but shows them that debating is a constant process of fine-tuning your style and your approach to things. And every time that you finish speaking, you'll have identified a couple of things that you could have potentially done in a different way, or you'd want to experiment with in a different way, always keeping that experimental mindset to develop yourself better. And if you're feeling particularly brave, you can ask your AM how they would have done it. Just like, hey, this is what I was trying to achieve from this point. Let's work workshop away after the debate that we could potentially have made that point successful. So building with your AM and encouraging them to join in your own development journey is something that can be incredibly effective for giving them a broader perspective on the development process for them as an individual. And also just like encouraging general debating habits, like speaks don't matter. Speaks are just a lie. Like obviously they matter, but they're a deeply arbitrary process, and I hope all of you AMs figure that out early. Yes. Even if you just look at like the AVP tab, like when it gets released, you will see the vastly different way that very good judges score debates in a way that makes it an inherently arbitrary activity. And also just like linking your AM up with general development opportunities, and also don't shit talk judges too much. This might actually be something that most people don't really think about, but the behavior you model in terms of taking feedback from judges or taking losses from judges can set your debater up in a very effective way or set them up in quite a poor way. Because obviously when you get very defensive to judges giving you losses, you decrease your ability to learn from those experiences, even if you think they've done it incorrectly. People do incorrect things in a predictable way that if you figure it out, it makes you a much better debater, even if they shouldn't be judging like that anyway. But B, it makes you much less happy. It'll make your AM much less happy. So do your best to model those types of healthy behaviors in the face of loss is important. Okay, any other questions? It's a lovely tea. I still have some pro debaters who flick me messages every once in a while. It's very nice. General BP advice for AMs. So make sure you're trying to absorb the strategic element of it from your pro. That can be something that your pro might intuitively understand, but not really be that good at explaining. And the thing that is most distinct about BP, or the thing that is most difficult to adjust, is obviously you engage horizontally and on the diagonal in ways that are a little bit unfamiliar if you only come from 3v3 debating, and they can be skills that are quite unusual. So I think my general BP advice for AMs is what you are trying to do, especially if you have a 3v3 background, is figuring out the particularities of BP style, figuring out how to be combative with your opening team without being derivative, figuring out how to burn material if you are an opening team wanting to crowd out a closing team, figuring out how to most effectively use POI acceptances and giving across the line. Those are some of the general BP skills that you're not going to pick up like at first instance, and will probably be very opaque to you when you start coming in. So those are some of the things to really be focusing your questions on, especially if you're coming in very new. And advice for closing teams. I think if you're an AM, that depends a little bit if you're speaking whip or you're speaking member. And we have done, go look back at the videos that specifically focus on opening and closing halves and how best to maximize your effectiveness within those particular positions if you want like a broader perspective. But definitely if you are an AM, what you're focusing on the opening is making sure that you adopt comprehensive, well-explained, robust arguments that'll stand the test of time. So making sure that you've really carried through all of the links in your arguments so that it can't just be sidestepped by closing teams who want to have their own debate, and then setting it up with your language about this is something that'll be durable within the debate. This is the harm that we are able to prove. This is why we matter within this debate. So that's like the real thing you want to focus on learning for the AM. And then obviously if you are in the closing teams, focusing on figuring out what extensions are, how can you deliver them, and the constant, this is what my opening said, this is what I'm adding at closing. If you really stamp that discipline into yourself as an AM, what did my opening say? Here's how I'm extending on it. Always having that binary within your speeches. that discipline can really serve you in the long run for figuring out how to become a really effective BP debater. I think the wind stopped blowing. There was a car that went past with incredibly loud music. I'm wondering if I can judge the... Oh, club night tonight. Everyone who's watching, come to club night tonight. I'm hoping I can judge from my balcony. We are not in person today, by the way. Obviously, New Zealand went back into level 1 last night here in Auckland. So we are once again without COVID restrictions, which is wonderful. But we are going back into in-person club nights from next week. But obviously we're going to be having Auckland Rumble, which is mostly in person for the New Zealand based. In fact, for all of the New Zealand based teams, it'll be in person up at Auckland campus. And so it'll be wonderful to see everyone in an ordinary debating setting again. What is the balance between rebuttal and substantial extension? So this is an excellent question, Ashvin, and the reason why I think it is an excellent question is I think it exposes one of the things that especially AM debaters have a lot of trouble getting their heads around, and that is that what you are attempting to do with an extension is contribute in a distinct way. That doesn't mean that contribution has to be substantive. It doesn't mean that contribution has to be rebuttal. Oftentimes your contribution will be both, and you should highlight to the judge, I've contributed 2 things. I've contributed a approach to rebuttal that wasn't evident in our opening team and is a substantial reason why we beat the opposition bench, and I've added a constructive argument that allows me to do X, Y, and Z. Highlighting both those things as your contribution is very important for becoming a better BP debater, because everyone underrates their responsive contributions, especially when they are whipping. How you articulate the balance. Rebuttal oftentimes can't really win you the debate, but it can decrease the contribution of another team, and it can help swing the favor back to you. So it's a little bit difficult to win the debate if you're doing rebuttal open, so you always want to have at least some substantive material that you're really able to add. But what I would note here is that one of the tricks that I have most enjoyed developing is using rebuttal not as a way just to disprove points, but to flip points and turn something that was substantive to them into substantive for yourself. So have a little bit of a think whenever you are engaging with responsive material. Is it possible for me not just to explain why what they say doesn't happen, but to explain why the thing that does happen is actually something that is harmful to their team? So if you start using that trick, it can be quite fun blending the distinction between rebuttal and substantial extension. Beyond that, it's a little bit of a rule of thumb. It really has to be debate specific how you feel, but ask your pro after the debate, did I get the balance right? Should I have added a little bit more, a little bit less? Especially if you're a second speaker, sorry, I see your follow-up comment. You're going, in terms of substantive points, you're going to be defending, which is essentially rebuttal. What are the attacks that they've had on your arguments? Why are those attacks not true? Knocking them out. But there's also building. So, and this is what we talk about when we talk about burning material. Often what I'll do, because I love speaking deputy, is I'll have all the arguments from my opening speaker, and then I'll add 2 mechanisms to make sure that it's definitely proved. Or I'll add 2 new substantive points in a way to try and crowd my back team, will hopefully be crossing things off frantically on their sheet as I run through that material and claim it as an addition. And it really depends, is the material that you have set up proved? Because you'll have one thing you really want to prove as the opening government team. And once you've proved that, all of the rest of your time can be in terms of building up additional mechanisms, opening up new areas within the debate, burning material that your closing half wants to use. And so it can be a little bit of a balancing act there that you will just get better at the more BP debating you do. What was your favorite Pro-Am tournament? That's a great question. So New Zealand doesn't traditionally have many Pro-Am tournaments. Auckland Rumble, I think, is the only dedicated multi-campus Pro-Am tournament. I will give a shout out to Lazy Susan, which I went to last year, which is also a Pro-Am 3v3 tournament that is held in the South Island. And then there's also South Island IV, though a lot of the teams that go to that tend to be AM teams. So when I've only been to South Island IV to speak once when I was in year 13, and I went with a first year student, so we are obviously an AM team. But a lot of the Pro-Am tournaments that I've gone to haven't been Pro-Am. They've just been like Auckland IV in the past, where you find a good pro debater who's just looking for a tournament where they don't want to go too hard. They're just tired of winning, and you can hook up with them in terms of saying, hey, can I go to this tournament with you? And they can approach it as a Pro-Am. So one of my favorite tournaments was with my wonderful flatmate who might be here. When Joe was a pro and I was an AM, we went to Auckland IV together. I think I was either like first year or second. Well, I mean, actually, I think I might have technically been a pro, but he was older than me, very experienced, great debater. So I learned a lot, even though we lost to Zach Chambers in the semi-final, which is outrageous. Just outrageous. He still brings it up. Sorry, that's not a cutie story. The University of Auckland Debating Society. It's a sad story about daylight robbery. Any other questions? I've run out of tea. There's a huge pot over there. I'll grab it. Before running this session, I went to buy coat hangers for my partner who has run out of coat hangers. And when I went, I love a particular Chinese restaurant in central Auckland who do these like cold noodles. So it was like 3 p.m., but they had just opened, so I called them. I'd like to take away some cold noodles. So they're in the fridge for me as soon as I finish this. So don't ask any questions, and I can get to my dinner as soon as possible. Obviously you can ask questions, but looking forward to that. That'll be very fun. Okay, I don't think there are any final questions. Quickly press enter if you do have any final. But we really hope to see you at Auckland Rumble. If you are a good judge or just a judge in general who wants to come along, do flick us a message and we can hopefully find some space for you. But it's going to be an excellent tournament. Hopefully people will learn a lot, and hopefully you will form relationships that are a little bit longer than just the 2 days of the tournament. Ashvin, the answer is that BP debating is not better than 3v3 debating, and that'll be my final word on the subject, and will be my final word in general.